Hi, everybody. We'll get started in a few minutes once more people join us. Go ahead and please change your Zoom name to be your full name, the name that your branch would have used to sign you up for this workshop, and then your branch as well. All right, just trying to wrap up attendance. So if you have not done so already, please change your Zoom name to be the name that your branch would have used to sign you up for this workshop and your branch. Is Austin Bernard Jackson here? No. Young Wook Lee? No. Che Won Shin? Magdalena Dupree's here? Yes, no. Emily LeBlanc? All right. Daniela Freiders? No. Harim Chang? No. James Cloud? Here.
Yep. Here.
Hello, James. John M. Nope. Jordan Brendan Joseph Hoyt.
Yep.
Nope.
Here.
Here. All right. Welcome, welcome. Katie Goose. Nope. Mason. Uh, Anita? An Anahita?
Yeah, here.
Yes. Did I just butcher your name? I apologize.
Yeah, you tried your best, Mike. But yeah, Anahita.
Okay. Nosando? Um, Allison? Zamakta? Walter? Tito?
Yeah, here.
Perez?
Hello.
Here? All right. Welcome. All right, I'm just going to get started. Maybe we will have some tardy folks join us later on. Seen a lot of familiar faces from yesterday. If you do not know me, my name is Mike. I am one of the team leaders at Mokdong Branch, and I'll be facilitating this workshop for y'all today. Okay. Daniela's here. Uno momento. Quick question. Kyan Kim, is there another name that your branch would have used to sign you up for the workshops? Is it Kyan? Kian?
I am actually not so sure because the thing is, I didn't even get the link for this. My coworker had to send me this link, but this is a name that I use at my branch.
Your branch? Okay. I just
Yeah,
want to make sure that you
yeah,
here. I don't want to get you in trouble.
no worries.
You were in the workshops yesterday, correct?
Yes, both of them.
Oh, Nasando's here. Present. All right. So today we'll be talking about A2 high, which differs from the A2 low and the A2 mid, which I went over yesterday. All right. So here we go. Open up my slides. Everybody can hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay. I've got a fan over there. I don't want to sound weird. Okay, anywho, let's get into it. All right, so the TOEFL test, it is created by ETS, which is a company that makes a lot of standardized tests for all around the world. So a TOEFL test is basically if a student from a non-native English speaking country wants to study in an English speaking country, they need to take this test just to confirm that they will not be totally lost if they're dropped into a seventh grade class in Iowa, or if they're in Florida, or if they're in the UK, South Africa, Australia, Ireland, any native English speaking country. So there are many, many parts to the test. And we took kind of a similar test for if you taught C1 high, anybody teach C1 high this semester? Yes, no, maybe so. Nope. All right. So the TOEFL test is that we facilitate at Cheongdam is pretty similar to the actual TOEFL test, but we omit some of the parts to it just because it's a pretty hefty. So the ones that I have highlighted on my screen right here are the ones that we will be focusing on for this semester. If you are teaching A2 High Eagle, Albatross, or Albatross Plus. So we've got the old faves, the hits, reading and listening. And then as you can see, there's many speaking tests and two different kinds of writing tests. We will only do the integrated speaking, the announcement and conversation, and independent writing. All right, so we did integrated writing this semester for C1 high, and then it switches off. So the A2 V1, the summer winter, always has the integrated speaking. All right, and there are two different styles or formats of integrated speaking, and I will go into those in greater detail later on in my presentation. All right. Okay. Very, very important if this is your first time teaching A2 High to review the segment guide for the basic overview of what you'll be going over each week. Depending on your branch and how they want you to facilitate the lessons, it might vary quite a bit. You might have more freedom, you might have less freedom to do as you please with the methodology that you implement in your classes. But this is a good starting point for you. So at least bare minimum, review this. So I'll do my best to try not to just regurgitate this information verbatim from the segment guide because that can be pretty boring. And I will do what I can to kind of give you tips and tricks, what I've used in the classroom, where I have found success, and kind of help things move along and help kids stay engaged and not just fall asleep. And yeah, I don't want to lose the kids. I want to keep them engaged and enjoy their time with me. All right. And then I'm assuming, or I would think that majority of the branches or franchises that you are at, you have some sort of shared Google Drive. Correct? Yes, no, yes. All right. So if you don't, the way that you access files, basically what the branches and franchises do is they take the information, the files, the resources from what we call the FTP, and they plop them into the share drive for you. But sometimes things are updated. I know 1 or 2 years ago, we updated the A2 High module. So then it was all new material. So we had to update things as the term was progressing. So if you need supplemental materials, resources, you can find them here. Here is the URL. This is what it looks like on a Mac. It will look differently on Windows. So FTP file.cdi, blah, blah, blah. The login always changes. So the ID is branch, the password currently I think is B717, and it changes quite regularly. So if you were trying to access this at your branch and this password does not work, it likely changed, and your branch manager or faculty manager, whoever is running the show, will know what the most up-to-date password is. All right. So each week is a little bit different. So odd weeks, so very similar to how we do for the writing and speaking. Odd weeks are the writing weeks, and then even weeks are the speaking weeks. But then we also do that for reading and listening, just because it's quite a lot of material, and we don't want to just bore the students to death or yeah, drain them mentally. Emotionally and physically. So we try to separate things a little bit. This is a lot better than what it used to be. We used to try to smash the reading and listening all together in one, and it's just way too much material, as I'm sure you'll find out if you are teaching these classes. All right, so on the bottom, this is what it will look like on your end on your teacher's tablet, and then what will be shown on the TV for the students. So each box is a different component of the lesson. You have to click on each component to open it for the students, kind of similar to like a vocabulary test. On their end, if I'm just on this page, it'll just have that basic page where it has like the teacher's name, what class it is, the student's name, all that jazz. Yes, and then the highlighted ones, so the ones that are in this lovely muted orange, muted brown color are the ones that the students get points for. It's uploaded for their MERP. All right, and I'll go into that in greater detail. So it's very important that you have to do these components because they get points for them. They don't want to miss out on the points. They love the points. They got to get those points. All right. As you can see right here, the writing, we have integrated, highlighted, and independent. We don't do independent writing. At least majority of the branches that I'm familiar with don't do independent writing because the test in week 11 is going to be, oh, wait, rewind, blah, 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 blah. All right, so I was thinking speaking. So the integrated, they get points for. I'll go into what this activity is, but they do independent. Apologies. So independent writing for this term, integrated speaking. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. And while the independent is not highlighted, I'll go over how you can facilitate each of these things so they can still get the points for that. All right, so weeks 1 to 8 is just strategize and practice. That's the basic the majority of your lesson. And then in weeks 9 onward will be practice and simulation tests. All right. So then on your end, you'll see right here on the right, it says practice test and simulation test, which differs from strategy and practice. Okay. All right, so here is what the segment guide outlines as the suggested amount of time that you should spend on each component. Just like with A2 low, A2 mid, it will vary the week and the class and the time, how much time you spend on each component. All right, so you're going to spend a lot more time probably going over like the strategy in the beginning parts of the semester, as well as the review, the answer justifications for their the practice questions early on in the term than you are maybe week 7, 8, 9. All right. Okay. All right, so with the high levels, there is a pretty significant jump when the students go from Birdie to Eagle. So the Birdie students, they've done, if they've been at Chungnam for a while now, they've done, if you think about it, like Mega, Giga, Terra, Bridge, Par, Birdie. So they've done the TOEFL junior tests, was that like 6 times? So they think they got it. They think they figured it out. They think that they are going to outsmart the system, not take notes. They're just going to rely on their short-term memory. They're just going to kind of guess and then get majority of the answers correct. But then they're going to get a big wake-up call when they get to Eagle. So they need a lot more hand-holding, and you need to have really, really good prep. So we really want the students to buy into using the skills that we teach them in class. And if we're not communicating the skills in a way that proves to them that they work, then we're going to lose them. So prep is super, super, super important for Eagle especially. And then Albatross and Albatross Plus as well. But Eagle more than ever. So if you get a class of brand new Eagle students, it's going to be a big wake-up call for them. So it's going to be all academic passages, professors talking about Renaissance paintings. They're going to talk about national parks in like biological biology classes. It's not going to be any more announcements from a principal saying that there's going to be a snow day. No more simple announcements like that. No more simple conversations between a boy and a girl. Oh, I missed school yesterday because I went to the dentist. What did I miss? It's not going to be that. It's going to be discussions with a professor. They're going to be talking about super dense academic things, and the kids are going to be pretty intimidated. So we have to do our best to present the material in a way that is approachable, less intimidating, simplify the skills, and then that's where we get the students to improve overall. All right. So channel your inner Karamo and share knowledge with the children. Okay. So as I was saying before, you need to click on each different box to open it for them. And odd weeks is what it looks like for reading and writing. Achievement test is independent writing. They will be given 30 minutes to write their essay on the test. All right. And the preview and matching, I'll show you on the teacher's portal later. But this is vocabulary that will help them kind of understand. It's kind of like the activate page on like a C1 mid, where it kind of gives them a reference for some vocabulary that they're going to run into so they can just understand it a little bit more. And so the preview, it just has different pages for them to review different vocabulary that they're going to run into. And then the matching is where they get to kind of see how fast that they can match it. So there is going to be multiple pages on the preview page where you have to unsynchronize the pages so they can go back and forth through it. Sometimes there are 2 pages, sometimes there's 4 pages of vocabulary. And then the preview, it always has 2 pages. There is, I think, 5. Yeah, there'll be like 5 Korean words and the 5 English words, and they have to match it by just clicking on it. So if anybody has taught B2, has anybody taught the B2 module before? No? Okay. I guess we don't use that anymore. But there's a similar exercise with that. So if the students, what they try to do is just like hit the different words to see if they can match them, but the tablets won't let them just hit it until they get the matches. If they get a match incorrect, it will make them wait several seconds, maybe 2 or 3 seconds before they can try again. So be mindful of that. The students will probably try to like hit the tablets, think it's broken. It's not broken. They just have to simply be patient and wait, which we all know that they don't like to do all the time. All right. And then there's 2 pages, and they have to go to the next page by swiping to go to the second one. And then afterwards, they will get like a black screen that they're finished. And you upload the scores in a similar way to the vocab test, and it will have those 3 different boxes for like the gold medal, silver medal, and bronze medal of who got the fastest time. And the faster time you get, the higher score you get, the higher grade. So if the students match all the words in under a minute, I believe it's an A. And then a minute to a minute and a half, maybe it's like a B plus. And then it's like a B after that, and then C. And I think in 30 seconds, that is an A plus. Or yeah, there's like a cutoff point for the grades and everything. So the students really like this. They get competitive. And I'll show you how it works later on. Any questions so far? No? Good? Okay. All right, here's what it looks like for the even number weeks. We have listening and speaking. All right. For these highlighted components, it's not always going to be the correct integrated speaking format. So you will have to prepare some supplemental materials, and hopefully at your branch, your faculty manager, branch manager, head teacher, MCs, whatever you got, they hopefully will have some supplemental materials that you can use in the weeks that they do not have the correct format on the smart textbook. Okay? Because sometimes these highlighted ones, and even the unhighlighted ones, they're the style where it has the lecture and then it's a lecture and then a conversation. All right, but we're doing the announcement. So something is happening at a university campus, like the library is closing for construction, or they are offering more classes in the science department or something, and then the students talk about it. All right. Okay, so the students get a taste of what the TOEFL question types are in TOEFL Junior, but they are given more opportunities in high-level classes to practice those. So here are the various question types that they have for reading and listening. In the back of the students' workbooks, they do have some pages, as you can see on the right of my screen. Different question types, where it's focused on each different question type, and it'll give them tips on how to answer each individual question type with an example passage, and it will go over the justifications for why a certain letter is correct. So this is pretty helpful to use if you ever want to, or you should be, having them take notes on the question types. So this is a good area for them to add additional notes on the detail question type, the sentence insertion question type, the inference question type. All right. And whatever steps that you use in the class, however you communicate the skills, it's super, super important for you to be consistent. All right. So if you tell them one way how to identify the thesis or the main ideas or details, or how to do the sentence insertion question type, super important for you to be consistent, because the students are going to get lost if you change things up or if you try something out the week after something that you told them the previous week. All right. So super, super important to be consistent with this. All right. Practice makes permanence. Okay. And there's many resources online. If you just give a quick Google search, there's a lot of people who blog or have vlogs on YouTube. They give suggestions about their own tips and tricks for the TOEFL question types. And I'm sure a lot of the more veteran teachers at your branch have their own ways. So use your colleagues as a reference, use resources on the internet as a resource to help you become more familiar with these question types. Okay, and then I find that it helps After I taught this module for a few times, I found that it helped me when I was in a low class, like a Giga class, or a Terra class, or a PAR class, by giving those students more simplified steps because I understood what they were going to eventually do later on. Right. Okay, so as the students, they graduate from TOEFL Junior up to TOEFL, we are going to bring them to advanced levels, so they need advanced skills with these advanced, more dense academic passages and content. So instead of a Cheongdam pizza, I'm not gonna include a pizza in there. So I'll maybe include the same kind of skills, maybe parts of that when I'm talking about identifying the topic and making predictions on things, asking WH questions. But in my EAGLE, my ALBA my ALBA Plus classes, I am using skim, scan, annotate. All right. So this is basically giving them a nice checklist to do to find the basic outline of the passage. And this will help them answer or understand the basics of the passage. All right. So remember, we're not testing them on their knowledge of what the author is writing about or what the lecturer is speaking about. They just are answering the basic content questions. So is this a fact that they said, or is this not a fact that they said? What did they mention? What did they not mention? Where can we put this extra sentence for sentence insertion? The summary question type. So what are the 3 different main ideas? All right. So after I'll use the same kind of strategies with them to identify the topic. So we're looking at the title and the first paragraph. And the topic should be in the rest of the paragraphs as well, but I feel like that's kind of easier for the students to understand or remember. So put a box around the keywords in the title, see if those are repeated in the first paragraph or there's synonyms of those words in the first paragraph. And then we found the topic. And then to find the thesis and the main ideas, I am skimming. So I'm not reading the paragraph, I'm skimming. I'm looking at it really quickly and I'm looking at only 3 sentences. So 90% of the time, they only have to look at these 3 sentences to identify the topic or the main ideas. So I'm looking at the first, the second, and the last sentence. When I look at those 3 sentences, I am looking for transitions, and I'm also looking for keywords. So keywords that are related to my topic and any repeated words, any repeated ideas. All right, and that will help me find the thesis statement. So then getting more specific, after I find those transitions and keywords, I'm looking for a sentence. So after I find those, so then I've got a decision to make. Is the first, second, or last sentence, which one is the purpose statement or which one is the opinion statement about the topic? All right, so then this gives them enough context clues to make that decision. All right. And then the same way that I did that for thesis, I'm doing that to find the main ideas as well. First, second, last. All right. And then to find the details, I am going to scan. When I'm scanning, I'm only looking for 3 different things. I am trying to find transitions, for example, for instance, however, but, so, if, and then some numbers. I'm looking for amounts of money. I'm looking for percentages. I'm looking for magic numbers, several, a couple, all, none, and then keywords. There's 2 keywords that I always tell my students that I want them to look for. I want them to find counting words, or some people call them quantifiers. I think counting is easier. So some, many, a lot, few, multiple, numerous, and then time words or frequency. So often, sometimes, this year, last, over the past 5 decades, rarely, much of. And then if these students find all of these context clues, they find transitions, they find counting words, they find time words, this should help them get around they don't have to understand all of the big academic words that they are going to be confronted with in the passage. All right, they can make inferences on what it means by using these context clues. Okay. And then annotate is just writing short notes on the side. So then when they're doing the summary question type, trying to identify the main ideas, or if they have to find an answer for a question related to the second main idea, they can just see it in bigger letters. Oh, I just need to look at the second paragraph instead of all the paragraphs. Okay. And then for listening, I'm using the same acronym that I like to use. I'm using tasks. So I'm listening for transitions. This will help them understand when the thesis is being introduced, when they're introducing a new main idea, when they're sharing a detail. And then abbreviate, I'm making things shorter. Instead of writing it in full sentences, I'm using symbols. Maybe I'm going to use like a question mark if they're confused about something. I'm going to use a money symbol. If they're talking about money, percentages, I can use that percentage. More than, less than, those symbols like they use in math class. If the population went up, I'm going to use an arrow like this. Or as a result, I'll use like an arrow to point to the results of the experiment or whatever. Okay. And then keywords. Okay. And as I said before, prep is super, super important for this level. I think it's really helpful when I'm doing my prep to annotate the passage in the way that I kind of expect my students to do so. And I can also write notes for myself where the answers are and how I can eliminate incorrect answer choices. All right, so I like to use this app called Notability. I think that there's like other free apps. On our teachers' tablets, they have the Samsung Notes app. So if you have access to the PDFs of the student workbooks, you can download the PDFs to your tablet, upload them to the Samsung Notes app. On the top right, there's a little button. It's kind of small. It says PDF Plus, and you can add that PDF to your tablet, and you can annotate it like this, use different colors, you can highlight things, and then you can use that as your guide when you're teaching the students. All right. Okay, so as you can see right here, it kind of looks like I'm a conspiracy theorist or something, but I've got notes for different transitions. I've highlighted them in yellow. I've got the topic in boxes. I just did a purple line for the thesis statement. I wrote little notes to myself on the right and the left margins. What are the main ideas? And then little justifications or kind of underlining words that will help me guide the students and elicit an understanding of why number 5 is A instead of B or C. Right. Okay. And then this is what it looks like for me. A little extra, I know. But this is what I like to do for listening notes. So the listening weeks, you're always going to have a discussion. It will be a professor in the history department or a art history professor or philosophy professor, psychology professor. And they're going to be talking with a group of students. So there can be maybe 2 students, maybe like a boy and a girl, or maybe there's 3 different students. All right. So instead of having like an even kind of T chart, I always will tell my students that one arm will kind of be like a T-Rex. So the students will always say way less than what the professor does. And then on my board, so if you're fortunate and you have enough space on your board, in the classroom, early on in the semester, I like to do the notes with the students. So on my board, I'll just divide it in half. And one of the halves will be for the discussion notes. The other half will be for my lecture notes. And then that's really helpful because when I'm going over the questions, I have a visual reference that should be pretty similar to what the students see on their end. And then I can walk them through, I can ask them leading questions to guide them to the correct answer. So if I call on Sally and Sally tells me that the number 12 is C, but in actuality it's B, I can ask leading questions. What's the WH question in the question? What are the keywords in the question? All right, where do we see those same keywords? What main idea is that connected to? Who said that keyword? Was it the professor or was it one of the students? Was that one of the questions that they asked? All right, and then I can just kind of show them, I'll circle it on my board, being like, all right, guys, so then we only have to look at this chunk of the notes. We don't have to look at anything else. And then in that case, I'm showing them how to use the notes. So the first step is to write notes, but the second step is to show them how to use these notes. It's not just for the sake of writing it down and filling up the workbooks. It's really important for them to understand how to use the notes. So when they're in a test situation, they can be independent and do it by themselves. All right. And then also very, very helpful and important, I feel like, to have notes for yourself for why an answer is what it is and how to eliminate other answers. Because if you can't do that in the class, then the students aren't really going to buy what you're telling them. They're going to be kind of like hesitant to believe that you're telling them something helpful. So I want to prove to them like I know what I'm talking about. The skills I'm sharing with you, they are useful, they are beneficial, they're going to help you in a test, they're going to help you increase your scores. So once I do that, I build rapport, I build trust, and then it's going to be smoother sailing rather than me just kind of winging it in class. Okay, so fortunately, we do have some resources for instructors to kind of guide you to grow in your answer justification skills for reading. But I don't think that we do not have this for the listening, unfortunately. But at least we have it for the reading. So each reading writing week, there you should have a document that is shared via Google Docs or the FTP where it'll show you each different question. So this is number 1 for A2 Albatross, lesson 1, the second passage. So it's showing you why is number 1 A, and then how can we eliminate B, C, and D. All right, so super helpful for you to reference this, especially if it's your first term. And it is a PDF document, so you can print it if you had a printer at your branch. But I think it's, yeah, I would encourage you to have your prep like in one spot instead of having multiple places because you don't want to lose papers, you don't want to misplace things. Yeah, so this is really helpful, but I would not just print this out and just look at it and just try to wing it and figure it out in class if a student has questions about number 1. So look over things, review it before you're going to walk into class. All right, to be prepared. Right? Okay. Oops. So I'm gonna go back over here. Oh wait, I'm gonna go to the teachers portal. All right, so here's what it looks like for the strategy page. And on this page, it basically shows them kind of like what I was talking about with skim, scan, annotate. But I just like to kind of keep things a little bit short and simple with it. So I give them the basic checklist of skim, scan, annotate, and then I'll have those notes on the board and encourage them to take those notes so they have a reference point when they are working on their iLearning homework at home. In the strategy page, it will always introduce a different question type. So they will have a practice passage in here, and on your end, they do show you like what the thesis is, what the main ideas are, kind of similar to like a C1 birdie lesson, which is helpful, but they don't have this baked into the teacher's portal for the practice section, which I'll show you. All right, so in the first week, this is always a question type that students really get intimidated by, the summary question type. And basically what this is just asking them to identify what are the main ideas, the 3 main ideas of the passage, and they are given 6 different choices, so A through F. And then on a test, usually on a TOEFL test, it will only be one question that they can get multiple points for. So it'll say it'll always usually be the last question on the question set. So maybe it'll be like question 13, and then they will be given maybe like 3 points, and then they can get partial points if they get maybe 2 out of 3 questions correct. Or sometimes they get partial points for 1 out of 3, but often they do not. But then another part of this, they have to put them in the correct order. So which main idea corresponds with the chronological paragraphs. So we can see right here that, what was that, D? So D was the main idea for paragraph 2 in this instance, and then F was the main idea for paragraph 3, and then C was the main idea for paragraph 5. So that's why it's in this order like this. Okay. All right. And usually the way that I encourage my students to eliminate incorrect answers, if it is a detail, or if it's not mentioned, or if it's contradictory to the passage. So this is contradicting to the passage. Then let's see if we can find maybe a detail. Oh yeah, minor detail. So if it's a minor detail, then we can eliminate it. Okay. All right. Then we have on the last page for your reference when you're doing your prep. Pretty helpful. So usually what I'll do in this this part of the lesson, I won't go through the whole entire reading passage because that's just going to wear out the students if I go over the whole entire reading passage for strategy and then the whole entire reading passage for practice. So I'm only going to go over the information up to the point that they need to answer the question. So for this one, in this case, all we really need to do is skim. We don't need to scan for this. All right, so we're just finding the topic, we're finding the thesis, the three main ideas. It should be pretty quick. All right. Then I'll show you the preview. So here's what it looks like. There are always going to be several pages. So I'll usually give the students maybe like 1 minute per page to review, and then they can ask me questions about the different vocabulary. And then be mindful that these words are going to be in context. So as we all know that there's multiple meanings for different words. So think about what is the topic of the passage, and then what kind of simple definition can you provide for the student in context to like science or history or psychology. Right. Okay. And remember, you need to unsynchronize the tablets for this part. Okay, then after that, they have the preview. Yep, so we have like 5 English words, 5 Korean words, and then they have to match it. Remember, they have to wait 2 or 3 seconds to try again if they get a wrong match. After they finish this page, it'll do like a trumpet sound if they got the sound on in their tablets. If they get a match wrong, if they've got the sound on, it'll have like a boing sound. Yeah. The next page, and then it'll be like a black screen with a little notice to just wait after they finish. Right. And then don't forget to upload the scores. But then most times usually I try to get to that point, maybe like just before the first break of class, or maybe it can serve as like a nice warm up after you get back from your first break in class to do this part, the preview and the matching. All right, and then you can do it multiple times. Usually I'll give my students, I'll let them do it multiple times to try to get them to beat their time before, or try to beat like the student who always gets the fastest time. It can be kind of a fun break from the TOEFL skills, but always upload the first score that they do. All right. Okay. And then the practice right here. So early on in the term, or depending on your branch, I guess some branches might want you to facilitate this as like a simulation test. But I think it's more beneficial to kind of provide more guidance or tailor your guidance depending on where you are in the term. So it will have there'll be a button right where it says media card right here. It'll be a button that says start test, just like you would for like a vocabulary test. And then you control the timer. So after you press the start test, the timer will start running. So if you start this, and maybe you zip through the strategy, the vocab test, the preview, the matching before the first break, you can't pause the timer. But just know that if the timer does go to 0, it's not going to automatically end the test for students or the practice test. You control it on your end. So you have to click end test for it to end. So don't worry if you go on break and it's just the time is just running down. All right. So you can always have like a different timer. What I like to do in my class, so usually if I start this before the first break, and then the students freak out because they see the timer go down, I'll use the clock app for the Google Clock app. It lets you have like a floating widget. So if you start the timer on the Google Clock app and then go to a different app, it will have like a floating kind of like purple rectangle, like oval shape that you can like put the timer on the page if you still want to have the smart textbook viewable on your TV screen. Or you can just have like a different timer on your screen too. That always works. All right. And the strategy passage and the practice passage are in the students' workbooks, which is different from the A2 mid, which they only have the simulate passage. All right. So very important, have the students use those workbook pages and get practice actually physically annotating it in their workbooks. Okay. All right. And to provide the guidance with the students, after I click start test, I like to just hit eyes on teacher. So then the students are just focusing on the passage in front of them in their books, and they don't get distracted by the tablets. And I can ask them leading questions. I can show them how to skim, how to scan really quickly. We'll do that together. I'll annotate on my teacher's tablet, and then I'll undo the eyes on teacher and then let them do the questions. Sometimes it can also be beneficial if you jump to questions before you just do the whole passage by annotating it. So after we find the main idea, after we find the thesis statement, that actually gives us enough information to answer the main idea question at least. So the main idea question type, more often than not, the answer will have keywords that are in the thesis statement. So if I had the freedom to do that in my classrooms, after checking in with my faculty manager or head teacher or MC, I think it can be helpful for your students to do that, especially for EAGLE level. So after we identify the topic, the thesis, I will jump over to the is there a main idea question? Oh, I guess there's not. So let's imagine for a second. Let's put on our imagination hats. Imagine that question one was a main idea question. I could do this question really quickly with them, and I feel like it's more beneficial to jump to it because it's more fresh in their mind. And I can prove to them, I can sell them on the idea that they should skim, they should scan to answer the questions instead of them just guessing all the time. All right. And for reading, they will always have 15 questions. Like that. Right. And usually the last will be the summary question type. Sometimes it is the table question type, which I don't think that they'd see on the achievement test. But yeah. So there's that. And then after they answer all the questions, you have to end the test just like you would a vocabulary test or the matching component. And then you'll see after you hit view results, they will have those 3 blocks for gold medal, silver medal, and bronze medal for the 3 highest scores. Right. So it's always good to give positive praise whenever you see improvements from the students or they've done a really good job. So don't forget we have those badges in the teacher's app. So you can give badges to students who have done a really good job. Maybe a student was a huge turd Ferguson the first week, but then the second week they really turned it on, did a great job writing notes, participating, raising their hand, sharing what transitions they found. So always good to give that motivation to them by giving them a badge through the teacher's app. All right. And then it's pretty helpful to have these scores be uploaded because then it gives you something to compare when you are reviewing their iLearning homework on the MERP. And then I'm sure a lot of you, I know at Mokdong branch, we always write student comments a few times a semester. So if you have scores for the reading in class and then scores for the reading on homework, you can kind of see what trends am I identifying. Are they doing not great on the reading in class, but then they're getting all A's and B pluses and the iLearning homework? Then that shows me that they're learning from their mistakes and they are making improvements. So even though they're not getting high scores in class, they're learning from their mistakes and making improvements by getting higher scores on iLearning homework. And that's a pretty easy 2 to 3 sentences right there for your comments. All right. Which I know can be a struggle. The struggle is real to get through all those comments. All right. And then let's go ahead and look at listening. Listening is a little bit different than the reading. So we have kind of like a preview page. This will always be the same every listening week for general note-taking tips. And there will be 2 separate passages in the listening week. So there always will be conversations. And yeah, so they have the conversation, then they're introduced to 1 or 2 or 3 different question types. And then there will be a lecture. So the lectures is where the students need the most help. So conversations are way easier. So if it was me, I would skip over the conversations and I would just go right to the lectures because that's where the students need the most help. All right. And then just like with the reading passage, I'm only going to go through as much of the passage as I need to that gives me the content that I need to answer the questions. So for this week, you see right here, they annotate the passage for you kind of like a reading. I think that, yeah, for this one, it's main idea question type. So really they only need like the first quarter they only need to really hear the first quarter of the lecture before you can just jump to the question. All right, so it's more fresh in their mind. They can use their notes to see really quickly, how can I use my notes to identify the main topic? How can I eliminate questions, look for supporting details or things that are not relevant or not mentioned or too specific, too general, and then show them how to answer the question more efficiently. All right. Okay, so that can save you a little bit of time. So if you are able to do that, if you have more freedom to do what you want to do on this component, make sure to check in with your branch management team before you do this. But I would highly encourage you to just skip over the conversation bit because, yeah, it's easier for them. Okay. And then the preview and matching is the same with the listening speaking weeks as it is with the reading and writing weeks. And then same thing. So there's always going to be a discussion, the first part of the listening with 6 questions, and then a lecture with 8 questions. So you'll need to take a break kind of with like when you're guiding the notes. So usually I'll have the students, I'll guide them through taking notes on the discussion first, and then I'll undo the eyes on teacher and let them do the first 6 questions. Sometimes the students need to rehear or they need parts of the listening replayed. So make note of that in your prep. So then you can do those questions maybe first. So I always like to do them before I have them do the other ones. So if I'm doing this is A2 Eagle lesson 2, I'll mark in my notes that I need to replay number 5. So then after we take notes on the discussion, I'll instruct my students, all right, guys, let's go ahead and go right to number 5 because we need to listen to this part again. I'll play the passage, the clip of it for them, and then I'll give them maybe like 30 seconds to do the other questions each. So if we have like 5 remaining questions, that's like what, like 2.5 minutes right there. And then you can use your best judgment, give them a little bit more time in the early parts of the semester than you would later on in the term. But I think 30 seconds is a good starting point because on the achievement tests, actually, they only have 10 seconds to answer the questions. So it's a lot more difficult. On the achievement test, they will also not be able to see the question. They can only listen to the question. They only can see the answer choices. So on their end, it'll have just the 4 choices for them. And then they'll see an empty bar at the top that will slowly fill up. It'll count down from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then after it goes to 0, it just automatically turns the page. they can't go back. All right, so they have to be really, really quick. All right, so if we start at 30 seconds per question in the beginning part of the term, we can slowly give them less time, and then that way they can be more prepared. It won't be a surprise to them that they only have 10 seconds on the achievement test. All right. And then second half, they have the lecture. And then there's always going to be 8 questions. And then some of the ones, they will have some replays. So have them do that the first question, or maybe after they finish the other questions, they can do that last. Right there. All right. And then while the whatchamacallit, the segment guide does allocate or suggest that 30 minutes, 30 minutes be spent on answer justifications. You don't, I think it'd be hard for you to kind of keep the students engaged if you go over every single question. So I like to always look at after I have uploaded the scores, I view the results, I can see the most common are the questions that have been chosen incorrectly the most. So I can choose maybe the top 3 questions that were the hardest for the students, and I can go into greater detail about justifying those answers. And then after that, I can ask if any students want to go over any other questions. All right. So instead of going through all 13 or 14, 15 questions, I'll start with the 3 hardest ones, and then I'll go over other ones if the students want to. All right. Okay. Also, additionally, if your branch or franchise does give you the flexibility, it can be helpful to go over some of the questions, the harder ones, the ones that the students, the question types that the students have not been introduced to yet, or you haven't reviewed yet in your lessons. I think it can be helpful to keep them engaged to go over those questions before you upload the scores. So if you are able to do that, maybe do some of the questions with the students or go over some of the questions before you upload the scores. I think that that's totally fine. Remember, they do get a lot of practice on iLearning homework. So the in-class practice questions are not the only time that they get to work on this. Okay. All right. So kind of see where you can shave time off, keep them engaged, and go over questions and help them learn from their mistakes. That can always be helpful. All right. Any questions before I move on? I know it's a lot of information. Yeah, no? Good? Okay. And then don't forget, we got to upload the scores with these. Okay. So now go back to here. So if you were in my A2 low and A2 mid, this looks probably very familiar. I always like to show like a Google Doc or a slide of the basic format, what I want or what I expect my students to, how I want them to organize their essay. Some of the I'm sure you've seen like great essays, but they're not organized at all. They have horrible penmanship. So the basics, what I want them to do first, usually more often than not in the term, is to understand the correct format, and then I can help them become better writers, maybe get their details a little bit better, maybe get their main ideas a little bit better. But a good starting point would be to format their paragraphs in the correct manner. So as they are going up to from TOEFL Junior to TOEFL, they need to include 3 reasons and 3 details, not just 2 reasons anymore. So they need to give 3. All right, which can be more difficult for them. So I'm showing them on the screen, what do I expect? What's the minimum I need from an introduction paragraph? I need a hook. Remember, that can be a question or a fact related to the topic. It's not the writing prompt. It is a different question that they can ask the reader to get them interested. And then opinion statement, they always need to have that transition phrase, in my opinion. And then what is that? And then transition sentence. I have several reasons to support my opinion. And I always want to give them reminders to use transitions when they're introducing their reasons and when they are sharing their details. All right. And then try to give them some ideas about some transitions that they can use to mix it up. Instead of always using first, second, last, they can use to begin with, in addition, moreover, finally, furthermore, lastly. All right. And that can kind of make it a more advanced essay. Okay. All right. And then their conclusion paragraph need to restate their opinion, summarize their reasons, add some final thoughts. And then just like with tasks, I like to use an acronym for their writing. So I always like to use ME/HE, so money, education, health, environment, entertainment. When I give them an acronym, I find that that's a good reference for them to brainstorm really quickly because we want to avoid redundancy in the reasons. All right, because if they're redundant in their reasons, if they repeat themselves often, just talk and do circular reasoning, then they're not going to get points for that. So if they can come up with like a money reason, a health reason, an environment reason to support their opinion, then those are three distinct reasons that they can get points for instead of having like all education reasons or something, or just like regurgitating what they already said. All right. Other ways they can prove their essay is just integrate lesson vocabulary into their essays. Use a bigger variety of transition words, avoid hypothetical examples. Like if student A did this, then student B would do this. That's not gonna be helpful for the essay. And they will have 30 minutes to complete the essay, so I think it's always a good idea to have them spend like 3 to 5 minutes just making a basic outline in the margins. So then they come up with a game plan for their essay before they just get right into it and run into obstacles, right? And then for your prompts, there are prompts that are in the Smart Textbook in the independent section, but I sometimes like to mix it up and have prompts that are more similar to what they will see on the level test, the achievement test. So some examples would be, do you prefer to study in the morning or study at night? Uh, do you believe that it's better to take one big test at the end of the semester or take several small tests during the semester? So I think those kind of prompts are always better than, do you agree or disagree? My teacher is the best teacher in the world. That can be fun for the students, but that's not really going to help prepare them or become better writers for the achievement test. So try to keep them as close as possible, like agree, disagree questions, which prefer A or prefer B. Those are the ones that they're going to be seeing on a test. All right. And then after I introduce any kind of skill or any kind of acronym in class, I always want to have some short and sweet practice or kind of example or prompt to show them how useful and beneficial the acronym can be. So I'll always use like a simple question like, what's the best city in the world to live in? And then encourage them to pick the easiest answer. Because our branch is in Seoul, I'll try to elicit Seoul from them. And then what's a money reason? Oh, there's many jobs in Seoul. Are they good jobs or bad jobs? They're great jobs. Do they get a lot of money or a little bit of money? They get a lot of money. What about education? There's a lot of good what? There's a lot of good schools. There's a lot of good universities, good academies. Of health. When we get sick, where can we go? Hospitals. Are they good hospitals or bad hospitals? Good hospitals. Environment. On the weekend, if you want to hang out with friends this weekend, where can we go? We can go to the park. What can we do at the park? We can have a picnic. We can ride bikes. We can go for a walk. We can go to the playground. Are they good playgrounds or bad playgrounds? They're great playgrounds. Entertainment. Where can we go for fun? We can go see a movie at the movie theater. We can go to the cafe. We can go to the PC room. We can go to the library. We can go to the park. And by going through that exercise and just showing them how fast, quick, and easy that can be to brainstorm different money reasons, education, health, environment, entertainment reasons, then that gets them to kind of buy in to brainstorming in that way instead of just coming up with silly answers or things that make no sense. All right. So at the end of the day, we really want to help them increase their scores. And the way to do that is to provide strategies and ways they can do that. And this is one of them. So you don't have to necessarily use this if you don't want to. But remember, whatever you decide to do, just be consistent with it. Okay. All right. So for integrated speaking, this is where it puts together a lot of the core fundamental skills. So the same reading skills that they are using in class are the same ones that they're going to use to understand what is this announcement about. The same listening skills that we practice with on the even weeks are the same ones that we're going to be using to write notes about the conversation. This is what it will look like on their level test, their achievement test. It will always have an announcement at the top about something happening on a university campus. Maybe they are going to charge more for driving or parking permits, or maybe right here they're discontinuing the tutoring program. And then the listening will always be a conversation between two students. It'll always be a boy and a girl, a man and a woman. All right. And then they're going to be talking about their feelings, their opinions about the announcement. On the bottom right here, it always tells them whose opinion that they need to summarize for you in the test. So the tip that I always tell my students is to the first thing to do, look at the bottom of the page. Is it the man's opinion or the woman's opinion? So in this case, it's the man. So then we would just put maybe like an M to abbreviate that. So he's the person that we really need to listen to. We don't really need to do, write notes about the woman in this case. And then the other parts of the instructions, we have to summarize his opinion about the announcement and then give his reasons and details for that. Okay. On the test, they will be given 45 seconds to read the announcement, and then we will play the conversation through our tablets or your own personal notebook or laptop for them to take notes on. All right. And after that, they will be given 30 seconds to prepare their response, and then 60 seconds for providing their response for you. So on the achievement test day, this can be very stressful, very hectic to get through all of the students. Even if you have 12 students, it can be pretty hard. But 16, that's a lot. So we really need to help the students during the term understand what to do for this speaking task so they're ready to go and they're not as stressed, they're confident, and we can get through all the students in time. And there's different ways that you can get through that. I'm sure your management team has ways that will help you get through all the students in a manageable amount of time on achievement test day. Okay. All right, any questions with this? No, yes, no, no? Okay. So show you on the teachers portal. All right, so here's what it kind of looks like on the teachers portal. So in this, even though it's not highlighted, we can still practice with this in class. We have the announcement and then the listening. All right, so this can be used, and then the other page is integrated like this. And they do get scores on this, but the ones that get scores on the activity, it's this. They listen to a sample response based on the passage, and then they mark, is it relevant or not missing? Do they not say it? So then the 6 is like the most points they can get for this, I think. And they get scores uploaded on MERP for this. All right, so there's different ways how you can facilitate this. I sometimes won't even do this. I'll just assign myself manually on MERP what grade I want to give them for speaking that day, because the numbers, they correspond with the grade. So if I give them a 5 out of 6, that would be like an A, or a 3 would be like a B or B plus. But check in with your management team about how they want you to do this. All right, and then for the integrated, we don't do integrated writing this term. Basically, it is can get points for this grammar exercise, where the first part, I'm just going to zip past this other stuff, and they have to identify 3 mistakes, 3 grammatical mistakes. So they have to choose it. That's the first part. They get 3 points for this. That's the most they can get. So yeah, those are the mistakes. Then the next part, they get to see the mistakes, and they have to correct those mistakes by typing in right here. Okay. And then you can do a similar thing where you just have them, where you can assign them a grade if you have the freedom to do so. So check in with your management team about that. Okay. Right. And then the students do have in their workbooks a little section. If you do have an integrated speaking task in the smart textbook that you're going to use, they can have this area for notes. But if you need to use supplemental materials, you'll probably need to print them out and then give them to the students like this. Okay. All right. I will just skip ahead because I'm running over time. Don't forget, really helpful to look over iLearning on MERP. This is how you do it. Go to Management, Portfolio, go to Evaluation List, click down different parts. You can see what scores they get. You can listen to their speaking practice. You can read their writing practice. You can make comments on that for your student comments throughout the semester. So a very helpful resource to look at. All right, so thank you all. I know I went over time. Thank you for sticking with me. Does anybody have any questions before I let you go? No, it was a lot. No? All right, so no questions now, that's fine. If you do have questions throughout the semester, feel free to shoot me an email, which is just right here, mikewolf.cdi@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to give a helping hand with your questions on A2 high, A2 mid, or A2 low. All right. Okay. So before I formally release you into the world, I shall send y'all the survey to submit. All right, so after you open that up, just give some feedback, how great and wonderful or horrible I did. It'd be much appreciated. All right, if no other questions, you are free to go to have a great, grand, wonderful Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
you
good
too.
day.